All right, guys, let's talk about Apple. That's right. It's that one time or twice a year where I'm actually going to talk about Apple stuff. They just had their WWDC event, and I must admit I did not watch the vast majority of it. I kind of waited till it was over and then went back and I watched the bit where they talked about Siri because what I wanted to see was how are they going to be implementing and integrating ChatGPT into the iPhone so that I can kind of think about how does that compare to what Google is doing on their devices. And what I did is, as I watched it, I posted a bunch of stuff on Threads in order, and this is what I'm going to use. I'm going to show you screenshots and so forth. We're going to talk through exactly what Apple is doing, and even if you're not a big Apple fan, I think you should watch this because I'm going to break it down as best I can, and it's actually pretty darn impressive. So they start off by saying that Siri is now going to be more natural, more relevant, and more personal than ever before. And they mentioned that there is a new look, a new animation. So when they held down the power button, which I guess is how you trigger Siri, I don't know if that was a thing, but when you do that, this like ripple effect went across the phone. You can see sort of some of it around the edge. You kind of went around the edge of the phone. I thought that it looked quite nice. I don't know what it looked like before, but it looks quite nice. So the first thing after that they show is the fact that you can talk to it in a more natural way. So the lady kind of says like, what's the forecast in? And then she says a place and then she goes, oh no, actually I meant this place. And it ignored the first bit and it actually just answered the question like a person would. A person would understand that, oh, they fumbled over their words and they didn't actually, this is what they actually meant, and it answered. So that was pretty cool to see. That's something that it's good to see that, you know, sometimes you don't have your thoughts like perfectly constructed before you do your search. You mess it up and Google can be like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. And it gets very, very strange. After that, they asked if they could make an event at that place at a certain time in the calendar, but they just used sort of the context that was already there. So I don't remember what place they said that they asked about the weather in, but they just said, make a calendar event there at this time for hiking or whatever it was, and it just did that. So it used the context and then it jumped into the calendar app and made that calendar event. And that would sort of illuminate the road ahead for what much of this was going to be. It's using Siri to control and do actions within apps. I speculated about this actually maybe a week or two ago, and it seems as though that is exactly what they are doing. But before they jumped into that, they did mention that you can now actually type in Siri. I had no idea you could not type in Siri. I'm glad that's a thing now because voice only is a little bit strange. They use this to demo sending a text message later, because basically what they said is Siri now has all kinds of information about settings and features for iPhone products. So they asked it, how do I schedule a text message to send later, and it explains it. So I guess that is also a new feature for iPhones. You can schedule a message to be sent later, and you can ask Siri how to do it in case it's totally foreign to you. They talk about how Siri now has the ability to use on-screen context. And look, Gemini, Google Assistant, Circle to Search, they all sort of have things like this. But what Apple's doing here is actually really, really impressive. So they give the example of you're texting with a friend and they've sent their new address in the text message. They trigger Siri and they say, add this address to his context card. It finds the address on the screen and then it adds it to their context card. That is really, really cool. And again, this is what we're going to be talking about, Siri doing things within applications. So they give an example here. They say, show me photos of Stacy in New York wearing her pink coat, and it is able to quickly do exactly that. And this is something Google Photos can kind of do, but you can't really do it from within Assistant or Gemini. That is pretty neat. But then they go a step further and they say, make this photo pop, and it applies a quick edit to the photo. I don't remember exactly which pixel it was. Was it like the 3 or the 4 where Google kind of experimented with doing things kind of like this? But they didn't really pursue it very far, and it never really came to fruition. Google, you've been leapfrogged in this regard by Apple because they have done it. They then say, take that photo and put it in my note talking about, you know, Stacy's bio, and it grabs that picture and it throws it into the note for that particular thing. This is all really, really impressive. Now, this is where things got a little bit strange for me, and I haven't had a lot of time to really think this through, so I'm not going to speak too deeply on it. But Siri now has something called personal context, which they say is a semantic index of all of your photos, calendar events, files, info in your messages, and emails. And they promise that it is totally secure, but you are giving Siri access to everything on your phone. It has an index of all of the stuff you're doing, and they give examples of what exactly that means. Now, as you see here, I said if people just accept this and move on, someone will need to check on Satya Nadella because of the big issue with Windows recall. I don't know how well this is secure. I don't know anything about this, but I do know that people freaked out about Windows recall, taking screenshots and trying to figure out everything you're doing, indexing everything you're doing on your laptop. And Apple appears to be doing something very similar. Maybe I just don't know enough about it, but this seems remarkably similar to an AI version of Windows recall on your iPhone. Cannot wait to see how people react or don't react to that. And they give sort of an example of how that's going to work. So they say, Siri, when is my mom's flight landing? And what Siri does is it digs into her text messages and it finds where they talked about flight information. It grabs that flight information and then it searches for it and gets that information and tells them. They then say, what was our lunch plan? It goes back into her text messages, finds where they talked about, a place they could get lunch at, and it tells her what that was. She then says, how long will it take to get there from the airport? It pops up on screen and it says 31 minutes, and you can click here and it's going to pull up navigation. This is all extraordinarily cool, but again, you are giving it access to all of your data. You're going to have to determine if it's something that you're down with or not. A couple more smaller notes here. So they have this pretty interesting take on smart replies in their email. It detected some questions being asked, and it's asking those questions and letting you select from some answers. That is really, really smart. I dig that a lot. They're also giving you summarized little footers or little descriptions in your emails. So instead of just having, we all have this problem, right? You go through your emails and there's like a headline and then like the first little bit of the email and you're like, I don't remember what this is. What is this? It's going to summarize them and it's going to give you a snippet that's going to tell you what that email is. I absolutely need that feature. We are now generating emojis. You can make your own AI generated emoji. That's a thing. iPhones are getting their own version of Magic Editor. I don't know if it's actually Editor or Eraser. They didn't show, I don't think, moving objects around, but they did show erasing objects, and I think it might have been using generative AI to fill in those gaps. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's all that they really showed. That's cool. We're also getting natural language search within the Gallery app. So instead of just searching for like clouds, you can search for more, you can talk to it more naturally. This is something Google's talked about doing with their Google Photos, integrating Gemini into it. Apple is doing the same exact thing. And I ended this by saying the future will be predicated on giving a tech giant all of your data. Just accept it. Whether it's Microsoft, it's Apple, or it's Google, they're going to take your data to do these things. You don't get these things without them having your data. What will I say, though? Totality about what Apple showed here. It's really impressive. And what I will say is it is more cohesive and I think perhaps more thought out than the implementations we've seen by Google and by perhaps, I don't know who else, Microsoft. Microsoft stuff is fairly well thought out. But this is very, very cohesive. It seems like they put a lot of thought into how each of these things will work and what people actually will find AI useful for. They did talk about generating text and generating wallpapers and emojis and things like this, but they showed like, hey, here's how Siri can now be really useful to you as a true digital assistant using AI. And I'm seeing people being quite positive about this so far. This is just such a great example of the difference, the massive gap between how Google does things and how Apple does things. Google will spend all of their time throwing random features out the wall. Some of them are great, some of them aren't, some of them turn into something, some of them never see the light of day, but they're just going and going and going. Apple will, from outside looking in, will be utterly stationary for years. But then when they do move, they step in and they will, if not catch up with Google, they will actually step ahead of Google with a set of maybe more narrow, but more polished, more useful, you could just say better set of features than what Google has been doing with their sort of rapid fire spitballing approach. This is exactly what has happened here to me. Look, I'm not an Apple person. I literally do not own a single Apple product. But it's difficult to look at what Google has just rolled out, or rather what Apple has just rolled out, to not look at that and say, does Apple have the best AI phone now? Did they just take the crown of smartest phone away from Google's Pixels? Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of smart stuff in Pixels and stuff that, iPhones just got the ability to move their icons wherever they want them. So, like, we can't just fully praise them for being the smartest thing in the world. But when you're talking about the AI, the LLM stuff, this is wildly impressive. I haven't sat down and done a full analysis where I list out all of the really smart features that Pixels have and then all the really smart features that iPhones have. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you which one I think is absolutely winning. But what I will tell you is it's extremely impressive, and they are right there with what Google is doing. Suddenly they have absolutely caught up in a big way. This is going to be big news. And I hope that it just pushes everybody to do better. Unfortunately, I do think it's going to push people to do better in the wrong directions. I will take you back to my closing message that we're going to have to all just give our data to one of the big tech giants, and we're all just going to have to kind of deal with it. Guys, thanks for watching. I cannot wait to hear your guys' comments, reactions down below, because I know there's a lot of Google Android people in my comments, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about all this. So drop those comments down below. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more content just like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.